This is the unDEAFeated podcast with your host, Keenan and Tully. This is the place where we show that hearing loss is not going to be a barrier in your life. You can still chase all of your dreams no matter what. It hasn't stopped me. Don't let it stop you. Let's go. Hey guys, welcome back to the unDEAFeated podcast. This is Keenan and Tully here. Today's guest is quite an exciting one, and one I've been excited to do for a while now. Melanie Hecker, the founder and owner of BLUEMOTH Hearing. BLUEMOTH Hearing, you may have seen them out in the news recently on the likes of Forbes and other big news sites such as that. BLUEMOTH Hearing is changing the game in how people receive hearing care and hearing aids, and it's kind of like a try before you buy system for hearing aids, and it's really past overdue in my opinion. You are now able to try before you buy different hearing aids. You get them sent straight to your door, and you get to try discreetly different types of hearing aids, and it's really putting the decision back in your own hands, where you personally get to see which type of hearing aid is best for you. So I'm really excited for this one. I'm sure it's going to be a great episode. Let's dive in. So hey Melanie, thank you for joining me on the unDEAFeated podcast. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. I'm so happy to be here today. I appreciate you making the time.
Absolutely. So just give the audience a bit of an intro about yourself and who you are and what you do.
Sure, I'd love that. So I'm an audiologist. I've been an audiologist for the last 13 years, and I've had the unique opportunity since grad school to get to see many areas of audiology that I think most don't get the opportunity to do. When I was in grad school, I started off as a research assistant. So I got to actually go to Copenhagen to one of the main, hearing aid manufacturers and visit their research facility in Copenhagen, which was amazing. Since then, I've worked in a myriad of different audiological practices. I did public school system while I was in grad school. I did a cochlear implant residency at Johns Hopkins University. I worked at a private practice in Maryland for many years, which is where I got my doctorate. And ever since then, I've gotten to work for a hearing aid manufacturer. I worked for them for 5 years and supported clinicians all across the West Coast, which was an amazing opportunity. Yeah. And then since 2018, I've owned private practices of my own in the greater Washington area. So, yeah. Awesome.
So what made you want to get into audiology then? Are there members of your family that have hearing loss, or, there must be something that drew you in, I suppose, to audiology?
There was. I wish it was a little bit more of like a romantic story. That was, like what I think you're looking for. To be honest, when I started undergrad, I wanted to be a nurse midwife. I've always had a heart for helping people. I've always had a lot of compassion and empathy. I've cared so much for people. So I wanted to be a nurse midwife. And unfortunately, that path didn't work for me. While I was in my freshman year, I actually had it was like a second cousin, but a very, very close relative of mine who was having a baby, and the baby made it, but unfortunately the mother did not. And I realized, I don't have the emotional bandwidth to handle that. And so I started on this voyage through undergrad of finding a career path where I could help people in the best way possible, but also be realistic about my bandwidth emotionally. And I just knew I wasn't able to handle that. Well, luckily in audiology, it's very, very rarely, if ever, life or death, and you're making a massive impact every single day, but most of your patients are relatively very healthy. And so I found audiology, honestly, by accident. I was taking an elective course in linguistics, and I fell in love with it. And so I went to the counselor and said, what could I do in linguistics that's not scholastic or academic, but I could actually apply it to helping people? And they said, oh, well, maybe you'd like to be a speech pathologist. And speech pathology and audiology have the same undergrad degree. And very quickly, I fell in love with the science and art of the ear. I fell in love with hearing technology. Everything about it, I loved. The fact that you had these patients that were relatively overall healthy, but they were having this struggle, and to watch the improvement in people's quality of life as soon as they were reconnected to better hearing, it has never stopped being this amazing, fulfilling moment. So it just continues to bring me joy. I love reconnecting with people. And it's one of those things too, when people say, oh my gosh, I didn't realize what I was missing, or I wish I wouldn't have waited so long to do this, or, oh my gosh, thank you for giving my husband or, father or wife this gift. That never ceases to bring me joy.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess there's less blood with audiology.
Way less blood. There's a lot of earwax, but less blood.
I don't do well with blood.
Yeah.
I mean, my fiance is going to school to be a nurse, and
I know.
I can't. The blood.
Well, that's your gift. You have other gifts.
So obviously you have recently started BLUEMOTH Hearing. Tell the audience a bit about that.
Yeah, so this has been honestly a concept since 2017. I pushed it at bay. I'm a busy mom, and I obviously in 2018 acquired my first traditional audiology medical clinic. So what you would typically imagine, you go into a medical clinic, you see audiologists or doctors, they do all of the testing, they do all of the treatment. And so I just kept pushing the concept at bay because I was honestly busy, but it just would not leave me alone. Yeah. So about 2.5, 3 years ago, especially after COVID, I'm like, there's such a need for telehealth medicine, and there's such a need for a different way of doing things that I just couldn't continue to keep it at bay anymore. Right. So essentially I started, developing, okay, well, what would this new model look like? There's got to be something that's more convenient. And Keenan, what really spurred the initial concept was, I've had a vision loss my whole life. And I started wearing glasses and contacts at a very young age. Yep. And, in that world, there's so many different ways that you can seek help. And for most of my adult life, I've gone in, gotten my vision tested, and then gone directly online to like 1-800 contacts, or, there's companies like Warby Parker now. There's so many places where consumers are empowered with choice, and the consumer gets to really kind of drive their own healthcare, which I love. But there's obviously limitations to over-the-counter or direct-to-consumer options. And so I really wanted to take something, especially seeing that OTC was coming with audiology. So I was like, okay, there's OTC over here, which is very much, my analogy for that is reader or cheater glasses at the end cap of, a pharmacy, for example. Right. Well, that's never been tempting to me or appropriate for me because I have a vision and like a true vision impairment. So I would never go get those. But that's one path. And then there's this highly medical version, like my brick and mortar audiology clinics. And so I was like, how can we take the best and most beautiful aspects of both of these, the accessibility, the affordability of OTC, but making sure that there's true audiological, oversight and care and support, that you have someone to lean on, ask questions to, so that way as a consumer, you're making sure that you're making the most appropriate and health-wise decisions for yourself. So that's kind of where BLUEMOTH came from, was like, how do we take the two of these and really make something new that's completely not in the marketplace that I think consumers are going to really thrive from, so that was the impetus for all of that. Yeah.
And I guess another big driver for it as well is trying to beat and break down the stigma associated with hearing loss and hearing aids, because I would imagine at your audiology clinics, the general age group are quite older, so, but there's this massive gap, I feel like, kind of between the ages of like, or somewhere in your teens to like the 40s and 50s, where these people, they don't really do anything about their hearing loss. So was that another reason that you wanted to start this as well, to try and help those people out? Because, especially for me, I have my own story with stigma surrounding hearing loss, where I stopped wearing hearing aids for 7 years, and because I was just worried about what people thought of me wearing them. So is that another kind of reason why you wanted to start this as well?
100%. That's actually one of our bigger missions too, is to break down that stigma. And I know that's one of the things when you and I first met that I loved about meeting you, because, we were both on that similar path. And I think that you're such a beautiful example of, this young, healthy, robust person who is just living this immensely rich life. And you're not letting your hearing loss hold you back anymore. I actually thought about you the other day. I was having an interview with a reporter. Okay. And her husband has had hearing loss since childhood. And his story was so similar to yours, where, there was a lot of bullying or judgment cast upon him. And so there was a duration of time over 10 years that he didn't wear anything. And so I think it's way more common than people think. And so for me, I guess I come at it from this perspective of somebody who was born with vision challenges, right?
Yep.
And my whole life, I've never felt like I was disabled or inadequate or broken in any way. And so I just feel that there should be that similar parallel with hearing. It's one of our vital senses, seeing and hearing. Yep. It's no different in my opinion. And then one of the things that I really think too, Keenan, is that in a lot of our marketing and photography and imagery, we're highlighting beautiful, myriad of ages to really help normalize and break down that stigma. Because I think people still, when they think of hearing aids, they think old, disabled, etc. And those terms aren't helpful for anybody. The point is, do I have normal hearing or do I have some hearing challenges? Okay, well, if I have hearing challenges, let's find some amazing hearing technology so I can live my best possible life. Absolutely. One of the other things that I think both of us are doing really well, and that's what I love about what you're doing with unDEAFeated, is we're actually showing and spotlighting what hearing technology actually looks like and what its capabilities are. They aren't these old, big, ugly, banana-looking hearing aids of the past, which unfortunately, as you and I have seen, even in recent articles, they're still using those photos.
They still use the images. I'm like,
I know,
nothing like that.
It's like, oh my gosh. Because even when I was in grad school, those hearing aids were outdated. You know what I mean? And that was 15 years ago. So I think you and I do a really good job of spotlighting, like, look at how amazingly small these are. Look at all the fun colors that they come in. Look at the fact that it can stream to your cell phone. I can listen to a podcast through my hearing technology. I think that, the more that people see how radically cool this technology is, it's just really going to help. One thing that happened the other day was I fit a patient with BLUEMOTH Hearing technology, and she's 45, super young, beautiful, bubbly mom, busy working woman. And she said after I got the hearing aids fit for her, she's like, well, what do I do with my AirPods now? And I'm like, well, what do you mean? She's like, well, I wear my AirPods all the time because I'm streaming all the time and taking calls all the time. And I'm like, well, you don't need them anymore because your hearing technology is going to do that. And that just blew her mind. And she was so happy. She's like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. But I think that people are so unaware of what they can do and how sleek they look. So for sure. Yeah.
So do you feel like it's always going to be kind of an uphill battle to kind of try and break down the stigma surrounding hearing loss and also show people how awesome hearing technology can be? Or, do you feel like we're going to get to a point where the stigma is just going to be completely, what's the word? Eradicated? And
Yeah, I hear you. I am a very Pollyanna optimist, so I'll start it off with that. But I really do think that this is going to be an uphill battle for a period of time. I do not think it's going to be like that forever. And one of the reasons why I really feel that way is because of what I've seen in the vision world, what I've seen in the dental world, for example. I mean, think about how many companies where people are on social media taking impressions of their own teeth for home Invisalign, right? And that started with companies like Smile Direct Club. Think about how many people have multiple pairs of glasses because it's an accessory. It's a fashion accessory. It's an extension of their identity. And I really believe that hearing technology will be the next in that wave to where people are loud and proud about their hearing devices, that they are actually accessorizing them. There's this one company that I found out of Scandinavia called Deaf Metal. Have you ever heard of them?
I don't think I have, no.
It's a really cool company, but they have all kinds of jewelry for men and women and cuffs and things like that to accentuate and accessorize the hearing technology. So I just think that there's more and more movement in this direction of being loud and proud about the device, just like there's been that movement of more and more funky frames and glasses and colors. So I truly don't believe it's going to be a forever uphill battle. But I do believe that that's one of the biggest challenges right now. And to be honest with you, Keenan, I think that overcoming that stigma is still the reason why so many people put off getting help for their hearing loss.
Yes, that was going to be my next question. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. The average person waits over 7 years from the time that they start to suspect that they have an issue to the time that they actually start pursuing some kind of treatment. That's a really long time to wait.
Yeah. I mean, that was going to be my next question is like compared to like, eyesight loss, like why do you feel like it is so long? Is it because people just don't realize, and like compared to something like your eyesight, you can tell straight away if you can't see something quite right? Am I right?
I think you totally are. But I mean, I also think it's a similar kind of path there too, in some cases, right? So there are some people who have a very noted vision impairment. And that's pretty evident from early on, whether it's you're born that way or, they find out when they're doing screenings when you're going through elementary school. Same thing's true with hearing loss. There's newborn hearing screenings for early identification. A lot of your speech and language development is an early indicator of if there's hearing loss. And then we get screened as children. But then after elementary school, there aren't a whole lot of screenings or tests for either of those unless self-reported, right? Right, yeah. So if your vision impairment or your hearing loss starts to onset after early childhood, then it really is hard for both of those because both vision impairment and hearing loss most often are very insidious. They creep up on you very slowly. And so most of the time, it's typically not ourselves who realize that there's an issue, but it's someone else bringing it to our attention. I see that whenever you're looking at a menu, you're straining or, something like that. Same thing, but one of the biggest clues for most people with hearing loss, and I think that this is important to start sharing, is if you're struggling to hear or understand in background noise, that's typically the number one clue. Okay, I probably should go get a baseline hearing test. I think the second component of that, which I find really interesting, but I think it goes back to your stigma question, is I think that when people start to realize like, oh, I'm really having to squint or I'm struggling to read this book, they go very quickly. They're like, oh, well, I should go get that tested. Right? Because there's not a whole lot of stigma anymore around getting a visual correction. But I think one of the issues is that when somebody's like, oh yeah, I'm not catching everything in background noise, or, oh, when my partner's speaking to me, I'm having to ask for a lot of repetition, or they're starting to like kind of make loving pokes or jokes about my ability to hear. We're not as inclined to immediately say, oh, I probably should go get my baseline hearing checked. Right. And so that's something that I'm really hoping to change. I know you're really advocating that as well, which I love. And I think that it's really important that, everyone that's a hearing advocate really start to share more and more that most people start having some degree of hearing loss in their 40s, which is decades younger than most people think. And so I would strongly encourage people in their 30s and 40s to start getting a baseline hearing test because, best case scenario, it's perfectly normal. Well, isn't that amazing to have that gold star healthy baseline to start from?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And then, also, even the percentage of people in like their late teens and 20s with hearing loss is growing as well, just because, everyone is wearing earpods, AirPods, sorry, and, and listening to music really, really loud, or they're on calls wearing headphones all day, every day for their work. So, even that percentage of people in that age group, that's growing as well with hearing loss. And
no, I totally agree with you. And what's interesting from a data-driven standpoint is that we're seeing a rise in millennials and their acceptance level of hearing technology. And so kind of going back to that stigma question of yours saying, hey, Mel, do you think that this is always going to be an uphill battle? I don't, because generationally, millennials are so accepting of hearing technology and they're so much more accepting of just generally their body, who they are, what they need to be a fully optimized person. And so, kind of like myself as an example, I never saw myself as quote unquote disabled for having a vision impairment. Same thing's true with hearing loss. And so I think that there's a lot of things that are breaking this down and just saying, this is just where I'm at. This is what my challenges are. This is what I need. And then making sure that we have all of those things in place so that way you're fully supported as an individual. And that's one of the things that I love doing as an audiologist is saying, okay, well, what do we need to do to make sure that you're successful in the workplace with your hearing loss? What do we need to do to make sure that you're successful socially and at home, et cetera, with the current challenges that you have?
Yeah, absolutely. Do you feel like help for people with hearing loss in the workplace is sometimes overlooked?
For sure. Yes. And that's one of the big, actually like movements that BLUEMOTH is starting to make as well is connections with larger groups and organizations. Being based in Seattle, there's so many companies that are founded and based out of Seattle. And just really bringing attention to the fact that, hearing loss is insidious. It does slowly creep up, but the massive difficulties that it can create for somebody, how much harder somebody has to work with an untreated hearing loss. Because they're having to put in so much more effort and focus. And so many people are feeling very fatigued at the end of the day, which as soon as they become, treated through hearing technology, they're like, oh my gosh, I have this new surge of energy. I don't feel so tired. And they didn't realize how hard they were having to work to overcompensate for that deficit.
Yeah. And I worked in a loud factory for about a year, and obviously I wore earplugs. Combined with already having a hearing loss, like trying to hear people and trying to communicate about my work was terrible. It was terrible. So, yeah. So why do you feel like the kind of the try before you buy system with hearing aids has taken until now to actually come around, like with BLUEMOTH? Like, why do you feel like other people haven't tried to do this before? Is it because audiologists, I don't know, I guess from what I've heard, some audiologists will try and sell a particular type of hearing aid to a person to either make more money or something, or, they have to try and sell more of a certain type of hearing aid. Is that true?
Well, there's so many different aspects to that. And I will say that there are, a lot of interesting ways with which healthcare works. And that's not just true of audiology. It's true of most medicine. And to be honest, I don't love it at all. And so one of the big things that led BLUEMOTH, and it's one of the reasons why I self-funded it, was that I wanted there to be no bias, right? I wanted there to be no financial or any kind of incentive for me to encourage one manufacturer over another. I really wanted with BLUEMOTH for there to be this immense amount of honesty and transparency where it says, look, these are the choices. And yes, I, as an audiologist, may have some certain preferences for you based on your particular hearing loss and your particular lifestyle. However, what I've found and what's been really amazing is that the subjective component is so much bigger than I ever anticipated. So, for example, when I send out, the BLUEMOTH experience box, which allows people to try 3 different sets of premium hearing technology specifically, specifically programmed for their hearing loss and their hearing challenges, there's almost this, I call it kind of a Goldilocks moment or this Cinderella glass slipper moment where there's this physiological visceral response to the sound quality of one of them. All 3 of them are amazing technologies. All 3 of them are premium level technologies. All 3 of them are precisely fit to your hearing loss based on a first fit. And there's a lot of calibration that goes on afterward. But subjectively, there's almost always one where they're like, ooh, this is the one for me. This is the way I want to hear my world. Well, how empowering is that for a consumer to be able to experience that and say, yes, this is the one that I feel comfortable moving forward with. Now let's get it dialed in and tweaked specifically to how I want to hear. And so that's where I love, again, this kind of hybrid model of medical and OTC in the middle, right? So this more consumer-driven telehealth, where the consumer's putting in all of their feedback and preferences, they're driving the whole plan, and yet we're making sure that there's kind of safety wheels on as well, and that everything is audiologically appropriate, that they're getting what they need, that they're getting it in an appropriate way, and so. I think it's amazing, and it's been fun getting all the feedback. Why do I think it's taken so long for this to happen? To be honest, I'm actually still shocked. Because that was one of the things you asked me early on. It's how has this not been here? And I'm like, I don't know. And, it's funny because in 2017, when I first had the idea, I was shocked that nobody had it. But I pushed it off. I'm like, I'm sure somebody's going to think about this real soon. And then it never happened. And I just saw this need. So I'm like, all right, well, I guess I'm called to make it happen.
And that was 6 years ago as well.
And so, but I do think that there are some legal and logistical reasons why it hasn't happened. For example, it's very, very difficult to get licensed in all 50 states. It takes a really long time. It also is difficult from a logistical standpoint, and a financial standpoint, to create a model that allows somebody to be able to try all 3 of these for a duration of time and then send them back. And so, for a lot of people, the traditional medical model is a very profitable and fruitful and reasonable and logical path. And so it's almost one of those things. Does it take more effort, time, and consideration to do BLUEMOTH versus the traditional? Yes. But for me, it was kind of a labor of, I want to call it a labor of passion, but also a labor of necessity. I just felt like it needed to be here. But I'll be honest with you, why has it not happened before? Because it's been very challenging to put together. I mean, this has been 2.5 to 3 years in the making, and we just got our website launched. So 4 months from today, 4 months ago, the website launched. So it takes a really long time to put the wheels in motion. But I think the biggest thing is from a logistical and a legal standpoint, it has been very challenging. So it's definitely been an undertaking. So that probably scared quite a few people away from trying it had they have had the thought.
Right.
Yeah.
Why do you feel like it's hard for a lot of people to actually take that step to go into an audiologist's office to get their hearing checked? And is there a level of they don't want to accept that they have a hearing loss? Is there some humility that comes with that? And then also, do you feel like BLUEMOTH will then help those people to actually, make them more likely to do something about their hearing loss because they're able to just, try some different types of hearing aids and see what it's actually like?
Yeah. I do believe that one of the biggest limitations that's slowing people down presently from taking that first step to go get their hearing tested is really, it really falls back on that identity aspect and the stigmas attached to it, is, well, if I do end up having a hearing loss, what does that mean? What does that mean about me? And am I ready to face that? And so with the work that you and I and many others out there are doing, is helping to break that fallacy down. You know what I mean? It's just like any other part of our body. We want to get it all checked out. We want to make sure everything's fine, and then do what we need to do to fix certain things, whether it's high blood pressure, cholesterol, vision, hearing, etc. And so it's all about being proactive in our health and wellness. But I do think that that's probably one of the biggest reasons that it slows down the progression of going in. I mean, the other thing is that we're all busy individuals, and making a time out to do anything for healthcare is typically, something that you really have to have some consideration around. So I think a lot of it too has to do with, okay, how quickly and conveniently. One thing that was really interesting the other day, even, so my brother, he's only 3 years older than me. So, in his young to mid 40s, and he was, saying he was having a really difficult time hearing in bars, restaurants, clubs, and he's a really active social guy. And I was like, well, go get your hearing tested. Obviously, I'm an audiologist. You should know this. Just go get it checked out. And he, his first question to me was like, well, where do I go? And that was such an interesting thing because, I think that so many of us every single day we're seeing, dental signs and vision signs. And these are things that are so commonly in our knowledge. You know what I mean? We go get our teeth cleaned twice a year. This is just normal behaviors. But audiology is something that isn't really thought of in the normal consciousness of people who are in the Gen X and millennial range, right? So I was like, well, just like anything else, Google your area, an audiologist, and see what pops up. And then see which one has good reviews, just like a restaurant, which one has the best reviews and which one has the best reviews with the most ratings, and, which one takes your insurance, things like that. But it was an interesting question that I never really realized was so to your question, why the delay is, well, where do I go? How do I even start this process? And then I think there's some concern too, this is what my brother Ryan even said was well, what are they going to do to me? What does the testing look like? And again, I think it's just, these are things that we don't have in our normal consciousness. We know what a dental cleaning is going to be like, so it doesn't seem scary. But for those that haven't had a hearing test, it is a little concerning, well, what's going to happen? How long is it going to take? And so just to demystify that process and just show it's a very quick and simple, testing battery. They're going to check quite a few things to make sure that you can hear and understand properly, and then review those results with you.
Yeah, absolutely. That raises a good point, because I feel like even around the town that I live in, you see billboards and signs for eye test centers and stuff like that. We don't really see anything for audiologists, and I wonder why that is. That's quite interesting.
There are fewer audiologists for sure than dentist and optometrist and ophthalmologist. I think one of the other things too is, I can't remember the exact numbers, but they were speaking of how many audiologists there are within certain geographical ranges. And it was really shocking how difficult it is in more rural areas to even get access to audiological care. And I think that that's one more compelling reason for BLUEMOTH, is the fact that, you can have all of the support. I mean, obviously you still need to have a hearing test, just like I had to have a visual exam in order to get my contacts or glasses. We're only working with prescription hearing technology, so we do need a prescription, which is your hearing test. But as soon as you've had that initial hearing test, all of the, trying and the calibration and the first fit and fine tuning and follow-up support, all of these things that are ongoing that people don't realize has to happen, those can happen incredibly conveniently from home. So that saves you, a trip into and out of the office, the doctor's office. It also saves you time if you're a younger working professional. It saves you time from having to take off from work to go in for a health exam or a health appointment. So that's just one more reason too, is the fact that so many people don't have close access to hearing healthcare.
Yeah. Well, the idea you had for BLUEMOTH is awesome, honestly. And wish you all the success with it. So this, I definitely thought it when I first came across BLUEMOTH, and I'm sure other people do. Where did the name BLUEMOTH come from? Because it's quite unique.
Yeah. So actually, I have to give a shout out to a very close couple friend of mine. So Xander and Kendra Veith. She's actually an audiologist as well. She works at one of my medical clinics. She's a phenomenal doctor, and her husband's amazing. They're actually expecting their first son here soon, which is really exciting.
Okay. Awesome.
But the two, like, he's incredibly creative. And so the two of them, you know, us sharing the idea of BLUEMOTH early on. And I'm like, I just don't know what to call it. And I want it to be something that's not, you know, totally on the nose, that it's audiology or hearing related. Right. And so the two of them riffed on this drive down to Portland, near where they're from. And they had this whole list of ideas and concepts. And so I went through them with them when they got back. And BLUEMOTH was the one that stood out the most for me. But the reason, the thoughts behind it is that, you know, when you're thinking about hearing and life, right, you want things to be full frequency, high frequency. And so meaning I want to hear all the tones. And so when you think about high frequency, moths in the animal kingdom are one of the animals with the highest frequency hearing, the most full spectrum hearing. And then blue is one of the highest frequency colors. And so BLUEMOTH just really is a nod to having high frequency and living a high frequency life, having all of the access to all of the sounds. Plus, I just thought it sounded cool.
It does. Yeah, I love it. It's awesome. I mean, it definitely makes you think like, oh, what's this? This is quite cool, you know? So what does the future for BLUEMOTH look like? Do you have plans to bring on other other types of hearing aids, other hearing aid brands? Like, what does the future kind of look like?
Yeah, for sure. So obviously, you know, we've just launched our initial starting. So it's very exciting. Right. We're starting off. We've chosen our 3 manufacturers that we wanted to start with. One of the things that I envision in the roadmap as we continue to go on is I want to move into the realm of having more hearing aid manufacturers of that premium tier level joining along. So that way there's even more options and choice that empowers consumers. So I'm really excited about that option. There's conversations with all of the manufacturers going on. So that's definitely in development, which is exciting. A second thing is that I want to move into the realm of, and you and I think we've both spoken about our passion for hearing conservation. Obviously, I'm super happy to help people when they have hearing loss and hearing challenges. I also want to advocate so people protect their hearing and don't need hearing aids for, you know, or hearing technology for a longer period of time.
Absolutely.
And so you and I both have passions for, you know, sharing awareness about the importance of wearing hearing protection. So offering a myriad of custom hearing protection on our site, that's something that I want to move into rather rapidly. And then with that too, moving into different styles. So as you know, right now we have the styles, well, we have a few different style options. The ones that look kind of like Bose or AirPods, that's an option. Plus the tiny receiver in the canal, which I know you get in the experience box and you got to see those. But moving into actual custom products as well. And what I mean by that is one where you have an impression made of your ear. And then depending on whether it's, you know, audiologically hearing appropriate for you, having a product that's just one piece that you can actually put deeply into your ear canal and just have that one piece there. So moving into that, I also very soon will be launching our leasing program. And so that will allow somebody to choose, okay, do I want to purchase my set of devices and wear them as long as I feel is appropriate? Or would I rather actually lease this device and then every 4 years move into the newer technology? That's something that is in the world of audiology, but is incredibly rare. And I think that a lot of people, especially those in more the Gen X or younger realm, would like. I know that you see that a lot with cell phones and other things as well is, okay, well, I want always the newest technology. I want to not have to ever worry about, you know, whether there's a warranty or not, whether something happens, breaks down. everything's taken care of under a
Right.
lease.
Yeah.
So moving into that realm. And then obviously I want to launch my philanthropy as well. You and I've also have a passion for that,
Yep.
giving back to the world, making sure that those who can't afford hearing technology and have hearing loss are able to be supported. And I think that with the leasing program are going to marry very well. So those are some of the bigger things on the initial roadmap in the earlier future that I'm really excited to bring to the US.
Yeah, absolutely. That's incredible. That's
but if
awesome.
you have any ideas, I'm always happy to hear them as well.
Not right off the top of my head, but
Yeah. You and I talk often enough. I know you'll let me know. You're like, no, this is something needed. So, but yeah, those are the earlier on things, because I think that those are some big needs in the hearing world. And so, if we're already going to be shaking things up and bringing new concepts to the market, I'm open to continuing to bring more and more.
Absolutely. Awesome. So to finish off here, what is your message to someone who is worried about getting their first set of hearing aids? Like what's the message that you want to share with them to kind of help them make that jump to doing something about their hearing loss?
For sure. Well, one, I just want to be super compassionate around the fact that, health in general can be such a vulnerable thing. And so, there's a lot of compassion and empathy around the process with anyone when they're engaging with BLUEMOTH. And so obviously you got to go at your own pace. You've got to be ready. You've got to be motivated. But that's one of the things that I really love about the BLUEMOTH experience box is that, well, for two reasons. One, it allows you to say, okay, I want to dip my toe in. I'm curious, but maybe I'm not sure. Like, is my hearing bad enough? Which is a question we get all the time, which my answer to that is, if there's any hearing loss, you should have a hearing. Any hearing loss should have it. But let's say you say, well, is my hearing loss bad enough? Or, will hearing technology actually make that much of an improvement in my life?
Yeah.
The beautiful thing about the experience box is that it's a very easy way in a very inexpensive way to just try it out and see. Yeah. The proof is going to be in the pudding. It's going to be like, okay, wow, I didn't realize I was missing that much. Okay, yes, this is going to improve my quality of life. Yeah. So I think that one big route of it is the trying, right? Like, you don't need to trust me that your hearing loss needs it. You can see if it improves your life. So one is that. The other aspect is honestly the discretion and the fact that you can try it from the convenience of home. No one needs to know, and so that's one of the messages that BLUEMOTH has as well, is this can be as loud and proud. You can share your whole journey on social media if you want to document it. Or this can be a very refined, discreet thing. You can go get your hearing test. You can do all of this remotely from home. You can have these conversations, and, no one even needs to know that you're trying. And so I think that discretion level of being able to do this, and then if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. No harm, no foul. Yeah. But I think that is one of the more gentle ways of, kind of moving into audiology and moving into hearing technology that kind of meets the pace of where most people are at those earlier stages, where they have so many questions and they're so uncertain. And to be honest, there's a lot of skepticism because of how things have been done in the past. And so that's why BLUEMOTH is just very, low pressure, very transparent. It's putting, you're really driving this, and we're here to support. And I think that's going to be a much more comfortable scenario for a lot of people, especially early on. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Mel, this was awesome. Thank you so much for joining me. This was great.
I love talking to you, Keenan. You're amazing.
You too. Absolutely. If you want to learn more, go to BLUEMOTHhearing.com. Thanks again, Mel. This was awesome.
Thanks. Bye, Keenan.
Bye-bye.
Hey guys, Keenan Tully here. If you enjoyed that episode, be sure to head over to our YouTube channel and also our Spotify and subscribe so you never miss another episode. Be sure to like, share, comment, share with all your friends and family. Also, be sure to head over to unDEAFeated.org You can sign up for the newsletter there and keep up to date on everything that's happening behind the scenes here at unDEAFeated.